If you look at the intelligence briefings for the third week of August 2026, these were compiled by David Akpovi, something incredibly striking just, jumps right out.
Yeah, it's a massive shift. We really aren't just seeing software updates anymore.
Right. It's like we're watching the entire world partition itself into these new digital empires.
It is. It's a profound shift
Hmm.
because, we used to think of artificial intelligence as this, I don't know, this abstract software race between tech companies in Silicon Valley.
Like just a bunch of apps competing.
Exactly. But the reality on the ground has radically changed. AI isn't just a product you buy anymore. It's actually the foundational infrastructure of the global economy now.
Yeah, it's dictating state-level geopolitics, consuming like gigawatts of physical energy, and at the exact same time, literally redesigning how you apply for a job.
Or how you manage your everyday workflows in the office.
Which is exactly why we are taking this deep dive today. We're going to cover 11 critical stories from David Akpovi's briefing to really bridge that massive gap.
Because it can feel super overwhelming, right?
Oh, absolutely. So our mission here is to connect the dots between those huge macro global shifts happening at the government level.
Right. The stuff that feels so far away.
Exactly. Connect that down to the micro, everyday tools that you are actually using on your phone right now. Because to survive this transition, you really have to understand both the new infrastructure being built and, the practical skills you need to navigate it.
And that macro infrastructure we're talking about, it's basically forcing the whole world to make some very hard choices right now.
Yeah, it is. And it starts with a pretty massive geopolitical ultimatum. According to Reuters, Washington is seriously considering asking dozens of allied nations to make a definitive choice between the U.S. and Chinese AI ecosystems.
Which is huge.
It's basically a warning, right? Like, if a country cooperates too deeply with Chinese AI initiatives, it could threaten their participation in U.S.-led tech and defense coalitions.
And naturally, Beijing is pushing back fiercely on this.
Yeah, they're advocating for what they call digital sovereignty, basically arguing that independent nations should be able to freely choose their own tech partners.
And to really understand this, we have to look impartially at the dependencies being formed here. I mean, we are not taking sides in this deep dive at all.
No, not at all.
We're just observing a historic shift. It's moving from a corporate competition to a full-on state-backed ecosystem contest. It's not about, which country has a chatbot that writes better poetry anymore.
Right. It encompasses the entire stack.
Exactly. Semiconductor supply chains, cloud infrastructure, access to critical minerals, the massive data centers, all of it.
So it's less like buying a software subscription and more like choosing a gauge of railroad track back in the 19th century.
Oh, that's a perfect analogy.
Because once you lay that steel down, your entire national economy is locked into that standard for decades. You're marrying into a supply chain.
You're locking your economy into a specific architectural standard.
Mm.
And it's interesting because while the U.S. is really pushing for these top-down global alliances to secure its standard,
China is taking a totally different approach.
yeah, they're executing this brilliant bottom-up strategy directly with developers.
Which brings us perfectly to Alibaba. Their Qwen family of models just hit a staggering milestone, like over 3 billion downloads worldwide in just 6 months.
3 billion. That is just, it's hard to even wrap your head around.
It really is. On Hugging Face, Qwen models had around 2 billion downloads in 2026 alone, which absolutely crushes the open models from companies like Meta and Google. But, the sheer number of downloads isn't even the most important part.
No, it's not. The real shift here, the actual mechanism at play, is ecosystem generation.
Right.
Alibaba hasn't just released a popular AI model. They've essentially released an open-source operating system.
Yeah.
Because they allow developers to freely download, modify, and adapt the code.
There are now more than 300,000 community-created derivative models based on Qwen.
Yep. Exactly. Alibaba is positioning its architecture to be the default digital infrastructure of the global open source community. They want to be the invisible foundation that everyone else builds upon.
So if the U.S. is consolidating top-down alliances and China is dominating this grassroots developer ecosystem, Europe really seems to be caught in this fascinating, maybe frustrating middle ground.
Very frustrating for them, I'd imagine.
Yeah, Christine Lagarde, the president of the European Central Bank, recently sounded the alarm on this. She bluntly warned that Europe cannot afford to miss the AI revolution the way they largely missed the first internet boom.
And the paradox there is that the raw intellectual ingredients are absolutely present in Europe.
Right, they have the talent.
They do. The European Union has 15% of the world's researchers. They produce a fifth of the top scientific publications globally. The talent pool is deep, and European companies are even planning a 9% bump in AI investments in 2026.
So Europe is basically operating like this brilliant R&D department for the rest of the world.
Basically, yeah.
Because they invent the core concepts, they publish the research, but their financial markets are too fragmented to write those massive unified checks you need to build out data centers. So the actual commercial factories just end up being built in the US or China.
Precisely. The science is world-class, but the financial architecture to scale it commercially across a unified market, it just doesn't exist there in the same way. The infrastructure for scaling innovation is proving just as critical as the innovation itself.
But, whether that infrastructure is ultimately built in Beijing, Washington, or Brussels, the practical advantage really goes to the person who actually knows how to command it.
Oh, absolutely.
Which brings us to a crucial survival skill right now. David Akpovi just released the 5th book in his how-to series, and it's called How to Master Prompts, the complete guide to getting what you want from AI.
And we really have to treat this as a practical news item today, not just a book release.
Yeah, because it represents a mandatory operating manual for all this infrastructure we're talking about. We are way past the days of just typing a vague question into ChatGPT or Gemini and crossing our finger.
We absolutely are. The gap between getting a mediocre generic AI output and getting a brilliant, highly specific result, it's entirely mechanistic now.
Right. It's about how you engineer the constraints you give the machine.
Exactly. This book breaks down techniques that are rapidly shifting from clever tricks to fundamental digital literacy. Take persona prompting, for example.
Oh, right, where you don't just ask the AI a question, you actually program its perspective first.
Yes. You explicitly tell it to act as a senior data analyst or, I don't know, a harsh literary critic.
Forcing it to filter its vast generalized knowledge through a very specific professional lens before it even generates a single word.
Exactly. You constrain the latent space.
Mm-hmm.
Or take another one, few-shot prompting. That's where you feed the model a few highly calibrated examples of the exact output format and tone you want.
You're essentially training the model in real time on your specific needs.
Right. And then there is prompt chaining, which is just crucial for complex workflows. You don't ask for a massive multi-step task all at once.
Because the AI will just lose focus and hallucinate.
Exactly. You break it down, you have the model do step 1, you verify it, and then you use that specific output as the input for step 2.
It really treats AI communication as a rigorous discipline, and the book actually has 62 practical exercises with solutions, so it treats prompting like a tangible skill you have to drill.
It's basically essential for anyone using Claude, Gemini, or ChatGPT right now.
Definitely. For anyone looking to master these tools, it's out now on Amazon, and the audiobook is on Audible, Spotify, Apple Books, Hoopla, all the major platforms.
And it is a critical skill to develop. But, practicing those sophisticated prompts on a massive global scale reveals a staggering hidden cost.
Yeah, because we like to think of this intelligence as living in this weightless, invisible cloud.
Right, but that cloud is incredibly heavy.
It is brutally physical. Just look at NVIDIA. They're partnering with SB Energy to secure 4.25 gigawatts of power capacity at a tech campus in Ohio, explicitly for OpenAI to run these massive AI factories.
And just to put that in perspective, 4.25 gigawatts is essentially the power draw of multiple major cities combined.
It's insane.
And they have plans to potentially scale that footprint up to 8 gigawatts eventually. We're talking about facilities housing millions of GPUs, but the real paradigm shift here is an acronym that is completely dominating the industry right now. LPS.
Right. Land, power, shell.
Yes, land, power, and shell.
So that's acquiring the physical real estate, securing the gigawatts of electricity from the actual grid, and then building the massive concrete shells to house all those servers.
Because silicon chips just aren't the primary bottleneck anymore. The limiting factor on AI is now the physical reality of planet Earth, securing the land, pouring the concrete, and tapping into enough of the power grid to keep millions of processors from literally melting.
It's wild. NVIDIA is effectively transforming into a real estate and energy utility company.
Yeah, it completely redefines what a tech company even means today.
Right.
They aren't just designing the engine anymore. They're laying the power grid and building the highway system.
It really grounds this abstract technology in a very heavy resource-intensive reality. And AI development isn't just consuming immense amounts of physical electricity either. It's actually actively consuming physical history.
Which is arguably one of the most fascinating stories this week.
Yeah, this investigation from 404 Media was striking. They tracked a massive commercial order of over 1,000 physical books using an Apple AirTag.
And where did it go?
It led straight to an Amazon facility in Nevada. And what happens inside is intense. They're taking these physical books, physically slicing the bindings off, and shredding the spines so the individual pages can be rapidly fed into digital scanners.
Wow.
And Amazon confirmed it. They buy these books commercially to develop and train their AI products.
It's a practice we've actually seen before, though. In an earlier deep dive, we talked about Anthropic doing something very similar.
Right, I remember that.
Yeah, to get high-quality long-form training data, which is incredibly valuable for teaching these models how to reason and structure complex thoughts, these companies are legally purchasing massive quantities of printed material just to digitize it.
But the physical destruction of the artifact itself to extract that data presents this fascinating ethical trade-off, especially when you consider rare or older editions, right? We are literally slicing the spine off printed heritage to teach a machine how to speak.
It is a profound transition. We are immortalizing the knowledge by digitizing it into these vast neural networks. But the physical vessels that carried and protected that knowledge for decades, they're completely destroyed in the process.
We're basically trading physical artifacts for digital intelligence.
Exactly. And as we physically destroy the old truth, we're also blurring the lines of digital truth.
Yeah, Google is making a major change to its Gemini and Flow models regarding this. They are actually making the visible watermarks on AI-generated images and videos optional now.
So users can just turn off that little symbol in the corner that tells you an image is synthetic.
Yep, they can just toggle it off. Google says they are doing this because they're relying on invisible infrastructure instead. They use a system called Syntheday alongside C2PA metadata to track the origin of the content.
Okay, let's break that down mechanistically. Because if I can't see the watermark with my naked eye, how do I actually know what I'm looking at?
Right. If you can't see it, aren't we just outsourcing our trust entirely to metadata tools? Like, how does this invisible metadata even survive if someone screenshots or crops the image to hide that it's AI?
Well, think of C2PA not as a physical stamp sitting on top of the image, but as a digital passport permanently baked into the file's cryptographic DNA.
Oh, interesting.
Yeah, so even if someone crops the picture, changes the colors, or compresses it to post on social media, that underlying cryptographic signature remains intact within the file structure itself. When you run that file through verification software, it reads the entire hidden history of how the image was generated and altered.
But that puts an immense burden on the user. I mean, the average person doom scrolling on their phone isn't going to download an image, run it through a metadata verification tool, and check its cryptographic DNA.
No, they definitely won't.
They just see a photorealistic video and assume it's real.
And that is the fundamental societal shift we are experiencing. Seeing is believing is officially dead. Verifying is believing is the new reality.
Wow.
Trust no longer relies on human perception at all. It relies entirely on technical infrastructure. You can no longer ask, does this look real to me? You have to ask, can my software verify the origin of this file?
That is a jarring transition for us. But for the next generation, this blurred synthetic reality is the only environment they will ever know.
Which perfectly explains OpenAI's latest move.
Yeah, OpenAI is officially launching a version of ChatGPT specifically built for teens, ages 13 to 17.
It's an acknowledgement that the technology is just ubiquitous now. The debate has finally moved past the binary argument of, should kids use AI?
Right, to what type of AI should they experience?
Exactly. How do we architect the environment they will inevitably use? This teen version includes aggressive safeguards around high-risk topics like self-harm or violence. It defaults to highly protective responses if a dangerous question is asked.
And it focuses heavily on education rather than just, doing the homework for them. It has a guided study mode, interactive quizzes, and parents can even set quiet hours. They're really trying to build structural guardrails so teens can navigate the tool safely.
Because they absolutely have to learn how to use it. The labor market they're about to enter is demanding it.
Right. Just look at the UK right now. They currently have over 1 million young people between the ages of 16 and 24 who are unemployed and not in school.
It's a massive number.
It is. So to tackle this, the government is launching a pilot program in Northwest England, putting 70 young people through an intensive 3-week crash course to learn AI tools from Microsoft, Anthropic, and OpenAI.
And it really highlights a massive paradox in how we view this technology. Because for years, the dominant narrative has been that AI is the ultimate job killer, the great automation ways that will make human labor obsolete.
Right.
Yet here we are, and a national government is deploying AI training as their primary engine for youth employment.
But I have to ask, can a 3-week crash course really future-proof an 18-year-old in a market that's moving this fast? It feels a bit like putting a Band-Aid on a structural economic earthquake.
Well, 3 weeks won't make them senior machine learning engineers, obviously, but that's not the goal. The goal is establishing AI literacy as a baseline professional requirement.
Like typing classes back in the day.
Exactly. Think back to the 1990s. You didn't need to be a computer programmer to get an office job, but you absolutely had to know how to use a word processor and send an email. The labor market isn't looking for AI developers for every role. They're desperate for traditional workers who can leverage AI to execute standard workflows faster and better.
And those standard workflows are mutating so rapidly. Just look at what Google is doing with Sheets. They are rolling out a Gemini-powered feature called Sheets Canvas.
Oh, this one is huge.
Yeah, and this isn't just a formula generator. You feed it a spreadsheet, and Gemini analyzes all the data relationships and actually transforms it into a fully interactive mini-app without you writing a single line of code.
This is where the mechanics of AI integration become genuinely transformative for everyday work. It's not just generating a static, pretty dashboard that exports your data. It actually features real-time, two-way sync.
Wait, so if I generate a project management app from my data and I drag a task to completed in the visual app interface, it automatically updates the underlying spreadsheet.
Exactly. The spreadsheet is no longer the final destination or the user interface. The rows and columns have just become the invisible skeleton, the background database for custom software that AI builds for you on the fly.
That's incredible.
You can just talk to Gemini and say, hey, add a slider for budget adjustments, and the app updates instantly. The barrier to entry for creating bespoke business software has essentially dropped to zero.
It really changes the definition of what a worker is. You aren't just managing data anymore. You are commanding systems to build tools for you.
Exactly.
But of course, to even get into that workplace, you have to get past the gatekeepers first.
Which are increasingly automated themselves.
Exactly. The first hurdle isn't a human hiring manager anymore. It's an applicant tracking system. And that leads to a new tool called Veyala. It was created by Hervé H., and it's designed specifically to beat that system.
How does it work?
You just upload your standard CV, you paste in the description of the job you're applying for, and in 30 seconds, Veyala analyzes the required skills and spits out a perfectly ATS-optimized resume and a targeted cover letter. It even works for academic applications like Campus France or Parcours Sup.
And the critical mechanism here is that it doesn't fabricate your experience.
No, not at all.
Your professional background remains the rigid single source of truth. But the presentation of that truth becomes entirely fluid.
Right, because the machine scanning your resume is just looking for specific keywords and structures. If you don't speak the machine's exact language, the human hiring manager will never even see your name.
Exactly. The static one-size-fits-all resume is dead. In the modern infrastructure, sending the exact same untailored CV to 10 different companies is going to seem as bizarre and lazy as sending a generic Dear Hiring Manager cover letter to 10 different people.
Yeah, AI just allows you to automate the radical personalization required to navigate those automated gatekeepers.
It really does.
So, when we pull back and look at this entire week of briefings, August 17th through the 23rd, the through line is just undeniable. We are watching the foundational infrastructure of society being rewritten in real time.
We really are.
On the macro level, we have superpowers drawing geopolitical lines and companies like NVIDIA buying up the physical power grid. And on the micro level, we have tools that turn your spreadsheets into bespoke software and tailor your resume to beat algorithms in 30 seconds.
It is all intrinsically connected. The macro infrastructure dictates the tools available, and your mastery of those tools dictates your survival in the market.
Exactly.
That's why resources like David Akpovi's books are so critical right now. If you need to understand the structural foundation of how these tools operate, his book, How to Use AI Without Coding, is essential.
Definitely.
And if you are ready to actually develop the practical skills to command these systems to do the heavy lifting for you, his new book, How to Master Prompts, gives you the precise mechanistic frameworks you need. We just cannot afford to be passive observers of this infrastructure anymore. We have to learn how to steer it.
We really have to learn the language.
I want to leave you with a final thought to mull over today. If our international supply chains, our physical energy grid, Our ability to verify a photograph, our daily workflows, and even the way we present our own personal history on a resume are all entirely mediated by artificial intelligence.
Yeah.
At what point does AI stop being a tool we pick up and use and simply become the natural environment we live in?
Yeah.
And in that entirely synthetic environment, where does human intuition actually fit in?
Man, that is a massive question to chew on. What do you think about this week's AI developments? Which story stood out to you the most? Share your thoughts with us in the comments.
Thank you for listening to this deep dive into the AI news based on the briefings by David Akpovi. We hope you'll notice again next week for another edition. See you soon.